Did you think that I had forgotten today? No, but we're running late. It's extra hot in the morning here. We had a day of rest, sort of. It only got up to the low 80s yesterday here. It's going to be a sweltering day, but once again, live from the parking lot of Sprouts Farmers Market in beautiful Land Park area of Sacramento, California, where we venture out once a week in our very, very unstable Volkswagen bus. Anyway, today I had planned to talk about colors and Kabbalistic colors and stuff, and I'll do that. I'll do that soon. But in doing so, getting in the car here this morning, I was digging around, and I've got a trash box here where I set things like my coffee that I bought at the co-op, and I ran across something I had printed out to talk about. I don't know how long ago, but I've already had something printed out, thinking that, and perhaps I actually shared it, because I've been doing this almost for 2 years. And I know that I've shared much of the information in it, or sections of it, because, well, let me explain. Our grandson, Alex Kazuki Oda DuQuette, was born 16 years ago. And 8 weeks after, and he was born in Japan. Jean-Paul was teaching in Japan at the time. And Constance had even visited him, a year or so earlier. But when Jean-Paul and Miwa had the baby, there is a special traditional Shinto ceremony, similar to a christening that takes place, I believe, 8 weeks after the baby's born. And the maternal grandmother has a special, literally she holds the child throughout the whole beautiful, awesomely beautiful ceremony. So Constance and I went to Japan to do that, to attend that. And it wasn't her first trip to Japan, but it was mine. And when the local OTO group in Tokyo at the time knew that we were going to be in Japan, they arranged for me to do a public lecture introducing magic, Aleister Crowley, OTO, AA. It was just a general introduction to all this shit, to completely new, fresh audience that had never heard of any of this stuff. A few people had, but in other words, it was my opportunity to introduce Western ceremonial magic to an Eastern audience. And so I had to write it from a point of view that just everything cut to the chase, just everything basics. And so I thought you might be interested in how I go about explaining all of this, or introducing Western ceremonial magic, thelemic magic, Kabbalah, all of that stuff, how I would go about doing it in a short public lecture. So I'm going to share that lecture with you. Public lecture, Tokyo, March 25th, 2006. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. First of all, I'd like to introduce our dear friend and sister in magic, Kazue Kashiwagi, who will be interpreting my words for you this evening. Let me say right now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, it will be my fault and not Kazue's. This is my first trip or visit to Japan, but hopefully it will not be my last. In January, our son Jean-Paul and his wife Miwa, who live in Mishima, had a beautiful baby boy, Alexander Kazuki DuQuette. He's the first grandchild for Constance and me, and the first great-grandchild for our parents, too. Constance and Jean-Paul are both with us this evening. They're sitting right there. Can you believe that beautiful woman is a grandmother? I still can't believe it. My talk here tonight is made possible by the good people at Nihil Lodge OTO here in Tokyo. They've been wonderful and generous hosts to Constance, Jean-Paul, and me this weekend, and we're so happy they invited us. My talk is titled, The Practice of Western Ceremonial Magic and the OTO. These are very big subjects, and I have only a short time with you tonight, but I'll try my best. Let's start by answering the question, what is magic? Magic, and I'm going to talk about the magic that I'm going to talk about is not the magic of the stage magician who pulls rabbits out of a hat. Magic is not a religion. It's a spiritual art form. Every magician is a spiritual artist. Magic, in the broadest sense of the term, is simply the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. That means we're all magicians. And anything we willfully do is an act of magic. Brushing our teeth, walking the dog, paying our bills. On the other hand, anything we do that is not an act of our will is an unmagical act. Like thoughtlessly reaching for a cigarette, or perhaps ordering that fourth martini, or any habit or thoughtless behavior that overrides the momentum of our true will, our life focus. Each of us has a true will that is uniquely our own. The true will is not our little wants and common desires. We're like planets and stars, and our true will is our orbit, our natural path in the universe. It is what we came to Earth to be. It is what we came to Earth to do. As long as we're doing our true will, we move through life like a star whose path through the heavens is assisted from every direction by the natural force of the entire universe. When we're not doing our true will, we're wandering outside our orbit, and when we are out of our orbit, we're in real danger of crashing into other heavenly bodies. Until we get back on our true path, life is difficult, and we're in danger to ourselves and others. That is the meaning of the words I spoke at the very beginning of my talk. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And I'll talk more about this law of will in a moment. For me, the ultimate change I would like to effect in my life is my own enlightenment and spiritual liberation. Call it what you like: self-realization, return to Godhead, absorption into the infinite, nirvana, salvation, heaven. It's the supreme goal of every spiritual seeker. However, the Western ceremonial magician goes about this great work very differently than the average Western religious devotee or Eastern mystic. The disciplines of Eastern mysticism demand that we quiet the body and mind and go within to deal inwardly with the obstacles that stand in the way of our perfect illumination. This approach requires quiet patience and confidence that all spiritual answers can ultimately be found within ourselves. For centuries, the Western mystic has been conditioned to seek outside of ourselves for spiritual answers. The religions of the West teach of a God outside ourselves. They teach from books and scriptures that tell us what to think, and priests and ministers who tell us what to do, and rituals that try to connect us with the invisible world of spirit. In a way, the traditions of Western ceremonial magic is a marriage of the Eastern and Western way. By using magical techniques and rituals, the Western ceremonial magician projects what is inside himself or herself into the outside world. We deal outwardly with internal issues. We personify and confront our inner struggles as if they were actually demons. And we personify and unite with aspects of our higher consciousness as if they were actually spirits and angels and gods. Unlike most followers of Western religions, the ceremonial magician views himself or herself as being an important link in the divine chain of spiritual beings. Not a mere observer or a helpless victim in need of rescue, but a principal player, a junior partner with the supreme consciousness of the cosmos in the great plan of creation. This confident and independent attitude is what separates the magician from a religious devotee. The foundations of modern ceremonial magic can be found in the myths and traditions of many cultures and civilizations, including those of Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Rome, Arabia, and the mythical land of ancient Israel. Its philosophies and practices have been passed down to us over the centuries through the Magi of Persia, the Hermetic philosophers and hierophants of the mystery schools of Greece and Egypt, the Arab and European alchemists, Rosicrucians, and Freemasons. But for over 2,000 years, these spiritual practices have been condemned as evil by the powerful religious and political institutions of the Christian religion. For over 2,000 years, men and women have had to practice the art of ceremonial magic in secret. For over 2,000 years, men and women have practiced ceremonial magic at the risk of their lives. Today, ceremonial magicians are no longer killed for our beliefs and practices, but there are many people, especially in Europe and America, who still think magic is evil. All I can say is, and remember, I'm having to be polite to a foreign audience here. All I can say is, that's very sad and very silly. In 1888, a group of English Freemasons created a magical society they called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. How many of us here have heard of the Golden Dawn? And there were a few hands. These modern magicians wanted to collect all the wisdom and ancient magical practices of the West and put them all in a step-by-step program of personal initiation. They wanted to make magicians. They patterned the Golden Dawn degrees, or levels of membership, upon a diagram called the Tree of Life. This famous diagram from the Hebrew Kabbalah divides everything in heaven and earth into 10 levels of consciousness and being. We humans and the material universe are at the lowest level, number 10, and the supreme consciousness of the cosmos, call it God if you will, is at the top level, number 1. Starting at level 10, it's the duty of each magician. Indeed, it's the duty of all human beings to systematically work to raise the level of our consciousness step by step until we achieve the supreme enlightenment of number 1. Now, all this doesn't sound like pulling rabbits out of a hat, does it? The creators of the Golden Dawn did a wonderful job. It was an idea whose time had come. Some of the smartest people in England became the members, and the Golden Dawn forever changed the world of Western ceremonial magic. The Golden Dawn itself dissolved around 1904, but offshoots of the original organization survive to this day. The magical theories, techniques, and rituals taught by the Golden Dawn are still studied and practiced today all over the world by ceremonial magicians. But back in 1888, all of this was very secret, and you had to be a member of the Golden Dawn or other secret societies to receive magical instruction. Even when I was a young magician, it was very hard to find published information about ceremonial magic. Today, that's not the case. Almost everything is published or available or on the internet. The problem is now that there is so much information available, the new magician doesn't know where to start and doesn't know what is valuable and what is not. I'm often asked why I chose the path of magic. As a young man, I sensed there was something terribly wrong with the doctrines of Christianity, especially those that teach we're all doomed to suffer an eternity in hell just for the crime of being born, and that the only way to avoid that terrible fate was to confess I believed in the most ridiculous things. Very early in my short college career in the psychedelic 1960s, I became profoundly aware everything that everybody is looking for in religion is already inside our own heads. There's no reason to believe anything just because someone tells you to believe it. Everything can all be experienced. It must all be experienced. That's what we're here to do. I began my spiritual quest in earnest. At first, Eastern mysticism attracted me very much, especially the spiritual sciences of the Hindus and the subtle wisdom of the Tao Te Ching. These studies taught me that personal enlightenment is not only possible, it's the reason for your existence. But my old Western conditioning made it hard for me to sit still long enough to really get inside myself. It was like I was trying to run Eastern software on my Western hardware. I needed to find something like Western yoga or Western Zen. I eventually found what I was looking for in ceremonial magic, the Kabbalah, and the writings and the work of a man named Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was born in 1875 and died in 1947. He was a member of the Golden Dawn in London from 1898 until it dissolved. He had a terrible reputation throughout his life. Newspapers called him a black magician and the wickedest man in the world. He enjoyed his evil reputation. He thought it was funny. He believed that if people were ignorant and uneducated enough to believe his writings were evil, then they deserved to be frightened by him. When I was first introduced to his writings, he also frightened me. I could tell he was a great genius and very knowledgeable about Western ceremonial magic, but his writings were far beyond what I could easily understand. He wrote as if his readers were also geniuses and already knew a lot about magic. He also wrote as if all of his readers knew when he was joking and when he was not. For some reason, I continued to read and study Aleister Crowley, and soon I had the very good fortune to meet and study under three people who knew Crowley when he was alive and who understood what he was talking about. One of them, a man named Israel Regardie, was Crowley's secretary in Europe during the 1920s, and was an early member of one of the offshoots of the Golden Dawn. The two others, retired Army Major Grady L. McMurtry and his then wife, Phyllis Seckler McMurtry, were two of a tiny handful of surviving members of one of Crowley's own magical societies, OTO and AA. Grady and Phyllis initiated me into the OTO in 1975, and I currently am the Deputy National Grand Master General of the Order. It's almost impossible to talk about modern ceremonial magic without also talking about Crowley. Even people who don't like him admit that he was the most brilliant and influential magician of the 20th century. Crowley took the teachings and rituals of the Golden Dawn and expanded them to bring them up to date with what he called the magical formula of the new Aeon. Now, I go on to briefly abbreviate the three last magical Aeons. The Aeon of Isis, the passive formula of the goddess, where all magical formula honored in an attempt to cooperate and harmonize with the idea of nourishment and motherhood. Then the age that followed, the age of Osiris, where we began to recognize that life was a partnership of the sun and the earth, and that the sun was very important, just like the father was very important in the procreation of we mammals. And now the Aeon of Horus, where we realize that the sun does not go on and off, does not die and is reborn. And that information, that knowledge, more or less destroys the Osirian formula of the dying god. And so the new Aeon is that of the child, that the sun stays on all the time. And so as far as the consciousness of the continuity of our own existence goes, we stay on all the time. Excuse me, there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex over there. He's loose on Land Park. Anyway, I'm going to skip over that part this morning because I've shared that with you many times during this series. We get back to Aleister Crowley. Hang on for a second. Hang on. Oh, I mentioned the fact that Crowley and his magical partner, George Cecil Jones, created a personal magical society that was based on the Golden Dawn model, which they called the AA. And unlike the Golden Dawn, which used group rituals and activities, the AA is very private. The student is in contact with only one person, his or her own teacher. Also, unlike the Golden Dawn degrees, whose degrees are only symbolic of those levels of consciousness on the tree of life that represents higher and higher levels of consciousness. In the AA, the magician must actually demonstrate to his or her teacher's satisfaction that he or she has actually attained the level of consciousness appropriate to that degree. Okay. Crowley's other magical order is the OTO. And this is how I'm trying to explain AA and OTO to people that generally have no acquaintance with this material whatsoever. Crowley's other magical order is the OTO. The OTO is different than AA, though many OTO members are AA members or are doing AA work as part of their personal magical studies. The OTO stands for Ordo Templi Orientis, Order of the Oriental Templars. Crowley didn't create the OTO. The order started as a German Masonic body that eventually grew into a magical society that joined Eastern magical concepts and techniques to those of Western occultism. Crowley became part of the OTO in 1910, and in 1912 was appointed National Grand Master General of the OTO for Great Britain and Ireland. Crowley eventually took control of the OTO and hoped it would always serve as an organization that would not only initiate and instruct magicians, but in particular the magic of the OTO. And he hoped by doing so it would help him spread his new Aeon message throughout the world. After Crowley's death in 1947, his successor as head of the order, Mr. Carl Germer, chose to focus on publishing projects, and for over 20 years, the order initiated no new members. After Germer's death, Grady McMurtry, one of the few surviving members, and the only one with authorization from Crowley to lead the OTO, started initiating again. I was one of the first few new initiates. When I was initiated in 1975, the order had dwindled to 6 people. Today there are over 3,000 members in 24 countries. And this was 16 years ago, so that that number has increased somewhat, I guess. The OTO is very different than the AA. Our initiation ceremonies are dramatic rituals, very similar to those of Freemasonry. The candidate is the main character in a series of beautiful and inspiring dramatic ceremonies that take him or her through the entire cycle of spiritual life. In the last 30 years, we could say 46 years now, in the last 30 years, Constance and I have had the privilege of officiating at hundreds of these OTO degree ceremonies. They are without question some of the most powerful and profound magical events we've ever experienced. Ironically, the most powerful and important OTO magical ceremony is one that is open to the public. It is the Gnostic Mass. The law of Thelema is the magical formula of the Aeon, and so it is for everyone on earth. But fascinating as a study of Thelemic magic may be for many of us, the fact remains that most people in the world will never be attracted to the theories and the techniques of Western ceremonial magic. However, this does not have to exclude them from embracing the law of Thelema or applying the formula of the new aeon to their lives. The Gnostic Mass is a stunningly beautiful ritual in which a priestess and a priest enact the secret of creation. In a very real way, the Gnostic Mass is an actual celebration of the supreme magical secret of OTO. Like the Roman Catholic or Orthodox Mass of the Aeon of Osiris, the Gnostic Mass also serves to bring the Thelemic community together, to affirm a common creed, and provide an opportunity for all to participate directly in the magical formula of the new aeon. If you've ever seen this Gnostic Mass, if you've never seen a Gnostic Mass before, I strongly urge you to do so. I think it's one of Aleister Crowley's most beautiful and important gifts to humanity. And now our hosts have suggested I set aside some time for questions and answers, so I'll try to answer some questions if I can. Okay, this ran about 15 minutes longer, but that little short introduction to that audience was an encapsulation as best that I could do, keeping in mind that the audience was hearing most of these concepts for the first time and had to put them in context with spiritual subjects that they were familiar with, Tao Te Ching, things like that. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. Now, like I said before, you've heard lots of this before, but I wanted you sort of to share with you the context of which, within a half hour, I tried to explain all of this stuff. In my book, Allow Me to Introduce, I write how I try to explain all of this to a person sitting next to me in the airplane as I'm traveling. And if you haven't read that, it's there's a YouTube of it out there. But anyway, that's it for today. It's very, very warm at the moment, and I'm going to try to get myself cool. I'm going to go into Sprouts and breathe the air conditioning for a minute. So until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.